Hello everyone, so today's video we are doing our monthly reading wrap up. So it's the end of August. I'm currently filming this, I think it's the 1st of September, I have no idea. Yep, let's get into it. Grab a drink, grab a snack, and let's get into the video. Okay, so as you guys know, if you've watched my videos before, you know that I got this particular idea off Belle Therese from Belle's Library Books on YouTube. She likes to give you some statistics and I love that idea, and I also love looking at my statistics for every month. It's something that I've started implementing into my videos as well. So this is my August reading wrap up. Now the first thing we look at is just like general statistics. So the number of books I read this month was 10 books. The number of pages I read was 4,071 pages. My average star rating was 3.75 and my predominant format was physical books. Now I did also listen to some audiobooks as well as read on my Kindle, but predominantly it was physical books. Then we move on to genres. So you can see I really did branch out in genres this month, which I'm really happy that I did. So we read 3 fantasy romance. Now again, I don't know, you guys might have seen one of my wrap-ups where I was explaining there's a difference between fantasy romance and romantasy to me. Fantasy romance books are books where it's really heavy on the fantasy and the romance is kind of like a subplot, whereas romantasy is really heavy romance in with fantasy elements. That's what it says to me. So we read 3 fantasy romance, 3 romantasies, 2 romance books, 1 mystery and 1 dystopian. Then we move on to ratings. I had 3 5-star rated books, 1 4.25 star rated book, 1 4-star rated book, 1 3.75 star rated book, 1 3.5 star rated book, 1 3.25 star rated book, 1 3-star rated book, and 1 1.5 star rated book. So as you can see, there's a big array of ratings. And then this is a quick overview of tropes. So this is something that I like to do because I like looking at all the different tropes that I read. So just the top 5 there, because if I was to go through all of them, it would take me way too long. So the top 5 is 4 books had the forced proximity trope, 3 books had slow burn, 3 books had the he falls first trope, 3 books were love triangle, and 2 books were enemies to lovers. Okay, now we move on to, I do have my reading journal up. I do also put the screenshots of what my reading journal looks like for the month up on the screen as well. So the first one you'll be able to see is my month overview. You can see what I read where. This isn't completely accurate because I always forget to put in stuff. So stuff like Spark of the Everflame won't be in there properly. Lights Out, I started reading last month, but that won't be in there because I'm just a bit useless when it comes to that. So the first book we read in the month of August was The Last Dragon King. This is a romantasy. I listened to this on Audible. This book was really great. I really enjoyed listening to it. Loved the concept of this as well. So in this book you have, I forget his name. Why is it that I always forget his name and her name? So we have Arlen, which is the FMC, and we have Dre, which is the MMC. So Dre is the last Dragon King. Take that quite literally. So he is the king and he can shift into a dragon form, and he is looking for a new wife, and he comes to one of the outskirts cities, and they have these things called sniffers where they can sniff out the magical percentage in someone's blood, and they come to Arwen's town, and Arwen isn't too concerned when she first hears because she only has 10% of dragon blood in her system, or dragon magic I should say. And when her mother finally catches up to her on this day, her mother reveals to her that what she's been told her whole life is actually not the truth, and she needs to be really careful around the king and the sniffers, and tries to get her to leave. And she ends up having to go to Jade City, is the place that this is called. And yeah, the story goes from there. The tropes we have in this is lost royalties, slow burn, he falls first, dragon shifters, and arranged marriages. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book. This book got a 5-star rating for me and a 1 chili spice. It's not super spicy. This particular author, Leah Stone, she does a lot of young adult romance, or young adult fantasy is her biggest genre. Okay, the next book I read, I'm so sorry to Onyx Storm, but this book probably takes #1 book of the year so far. I just absolutely love this book to bits and pieces, and I'm obsessed with it. I cannot wait for the second one to come out. The next book we read was For Whom the Bell Tolls by J.C. Lynn, sorry. This was such a beautiful book. So you are following Lily, and the first like maybe 3 chapters, if that, yeah, I want to say maybe like first 3 to 4 chapters, we are following Lily and her diagnosis of having cancer. And she's quite young, she's only in her 30s. And, you know, the opening line of this book is absolutely fantastic. I'll read it to you because it's great. I love it. Lily knew the cancer was going to kill her when her car wouldn't start. That's literally how this book opens. That's chapter 1, and it's just really good. So to give you a rundown on what this book is about. So like I said, it opens with us learning about Lily's diagnosis and watching her deal with that internally. And then, like I said, it's only the very first few chapters. The rest of the story is following her journey in the afterlife. Now, I really love the way this author has explained the afterlife. It's not specific to one faith that you might believe. Hell, and she also describes hell, and hell's version, her version of hell in this is very similar to Dante's rendition or imagination of hell. In this, when you pass, you are able to choose any sort of judgment that you want to go to. So if you are Catholic and you wish to go through the Catholic judgment, then you go through the Catholic judgment. And if you receive paradise, you would have paradise within the Catholic arch in the afterlife. And then in, like, if you are Anglican, same thing there. So it's up to you. Then there is also a universal judgment. So if you don't want to pick any particular type of religion, whether it be Buddhist, you believe in Nordic folklore, like all that sort of stuff, if you don't want to do that, you just go through the universal judgment, which is your like standard like right from wrongs. So Lily here chooses her judgment through universal judgment, and she's super convinced that she is going to go to hell because of how she was raised and things that were said to her as she was growing up. And she does get her paradise, and it's super beautiful when she gets to her paradise. And I'm talking like paradise is kind of like your heaven. If you believe in like Catholicism and all that, it's like heaven, but it's just different because she's gone through a universal judgment. So she gets her paradise, which I love the fact that they call it paradise as well, because it's her paradise, so it's specific to the individual that goes to and receives their paradise. And anyway, on her way to her judgment, she literally comes across and runs into 2 demons. Now, when I say demons, I mean these guys are like actually like 7-8 feet tall. Like they're really tall. They have tails. They're different colored. They've got horns. Some of them have wings. They're amazing. It's great. But she runs into them in the afterlife on her way to her judgment, and the demon that was there runs Hell's Gate. So essentially she is in charge of, you know, sorting through the souls at Hell's Gate and sending them to wherever their level is after those souls have received their judgment. Demon says to Lily, if you receive your paradise, feel free to come to hell and have a drink. Eventually, after a couple of weeks of Lily being in her paradise, she takes her up on that offer and ends up working at Hell's Gate and develops a thing called the Help Desk. And they spelt it HELLP, desk. It's quite funny. And essentially with her 20 years of customer service experience and never being able to bite back at customers that were bad, like mean to her, she decides that the Help Desk is where she's going to do that. So it's a really beautiful story. So I haven't told you, but this is a fantasy romance. So you're focusing more on the fantasy elements of the, you know, we're living in the afterlife, we're following all those types of things. We're following demons and souls and, you know, all that sort of stuff. So it's definitely more fantasy than it is romance. It's a really good slow burn, like a really good slow burn. The other tropes we've got in here is like war, third person, dual POV. So it is dual POV, but it's both POVs are written in third person, and it's really easy to read actually. And then you also have like a monster romance because lo and behold, she meets a beautiful demon named Belle, and yeah, it's a beautiful story. This is literally the best book I've read this year, and like that's saying something because I loved Onyx Storm, but this, I don't know why this just got me so gripped the way it did, but it was just so beautiful. And yeah, this is the best book I've read so far this year, which is saying something because I loved Onyx Storm. My rating for this was 5-star. Obviously it's actually a 6-star read for me. It's a Roman Empire book now, and it got a 2 chili spice. There's one particular scene in this that involves a tail, and it's amazing. Love it. It's such a good book. I highly recommend you read this ASAP. And mind you, this is like a 700-page book, and I read it in 3 days while being at uni. So take that as you will. The next book that we read that I'm kind of sad that I made myself read was Our Infinite Fates by Laura Stephen. I had super high expectations for this book and really thought that the concept was really awesome, but this book fell really flat for me. So to give you a brief overview on what this book is about, you are following these two people that for thousands of years have had to find each other, fall in love, and kill each other in every lifetime. Now, I thought that concept was just so amazing, and they have to do this all before their 18th birthdays as well. You're reading this trying to figure out why they need to do this, and in each lifetime, you know, they swap genders. Sometimes they're two boys, sometimes they're two girls, sometimes they're boy and girl, and then they switch. It's very different for every lifetime. You are following like past and present timelines, and I say past and present timelines because we have multiple different past timelines that come up. Some of the timelines from the past felt more beautiful and important than the present timeline, and I wanted to spend more time in those timelines, but they were only like a chapter long. So yeah, and then when we got to the reason why that they had this curse, it just didn't make sense to me. It didn't make sense to the story to me. It didn't make sense to... This is supposed to be like a romantasy, right? But the only fantastical element there was their fact that they reincarnated. So yeah, when it got to the end, it just became super fantasy, and it was very odd, and I didn't really understand it, and also just didn't like the way that it turned out. So I guess you guys could probably tell from the way that I'm talking about it that this was my lowest rated book of the month. I rated this a 1.5 star and a 0.5 chili spice. There's not a lot of spice in it. There's a lot of tension. There's like a little bit of, they talk about like the fact that they'd never done anything with each other before and why that was and whatnot. So there's no specific spicy scenes I can remember in this book, but there's talk about it and about them exploring certain things as well. Also, another thing that I've written in my review is I found that the writing itself was quite repetitive, and the flow of the story was also very repetitive as well, like, which I totally understand is kind of given considering the concept of this book, but it really fell flat for me, and it's really sad because I was super excited to read this book. I'd heard such good things about it, but yeah, it just really fell flat for me. And like, also, like, look at the cover of this, like, it's so beautiful, and like I said, this story just had such potential to be such a great story and be so beautiful. So yeah, this really fell flat for me. So the next book we read is A Fate Inked in Blood by Danielle L. Jensen. Again, this was one that didn't quite live up to my expectations. I thought this was going to be a 5-star, and it did not hit 5-star at all, but I still enjoyed this book. I think if you like Nordic mythology, you will really enjoy this book. It's very heavy on the Nordic mythology, and then you add magic to it, and you add this really strong fantastical element to it where, you know, these children of the gods have powers. It's a really great concept, but I just didn't love the storyline of this one in particular. What this book is about, you have Freya, who is married to a child of the gods, and how these children of the gods come about is when the children are conceived, you will pray to a god, and a god might come down to you, and you often end up laying with a god. And that's how the children of the god are created. So they have a drop of God's blood in them. Freya is married to one of these children of the gods, and he is awful to her, and she doesn't want to be in that marriage anymore. And she also has a huge secret where she is the shield maiden, so she has blood of a god in her as well. However, she has been hiding the fact that she is the shield maiden for her whole life, and something happens one day and her secret gets outed, and she is basically used as a pawn to try and win power over Skarland, I think is how you say it after listening to this book, Skarland. And she ends up in a predicament with Bjorn, who is her new husband's dad. And I'm just going to tell you that's it from there. So yeah, I didn't hate this book. I did enjoy it. I instantly went on to listen to the next book in the series because I really wanted to know what happened. And I liked the second book more. We're going to talk about that in a second. I definitely liked the second book more. I think Freya was a better character in the next book. I don't think she was necessarily a bad character in this book. However, we were trying to portray her as a really strong character. However, she wasn't thinking for herself in this book. She was definitely, you know, listening to a lot of other people. Whereas in the second book, I think she started to listen to herself a lot more and kind of came into her power and her strength. that's why I like the second book more. But this book still got like a pretty decent rating from me. Got a 3.25 star and like half a chili spice. It wasn't super spicy at all. There was one spicy scene at the end. There was a lot of yearning and tension between Freya and Bjorn, but yeah, it wasn't like super spicy or anything like that. And like I said, I had to go on and listen to the next book because I really wanted to know what happened in the next book, and I've actually gone out to buy the physical because I loved it so much. The next book in the series, as well as the next book that we read / listened to, was A Curse Carved in Bone, which is Saga of the series is called Saga of the Unfaded, and this is book 2. Now, I'm obviously not going to tell you what happens in this book because otherwise there'd be huge spoilers. But like I said, I preferred this book over the other book. I think this book was miles better. I say miles better, but my ratings probably won't reflect that too much. But I really did enjoy this book. I think this book is way better. Like I said, Freya seems to just become more of her own person. She becomes stronger. She's more determined. She listens to herself a lot more, which I really, really love to see. I love a strong, independent woman in fantasy books especially. I just love seeing them be so strong. So yeah, this book got a 4-star rating from me, and it got again, a half chili spice. They're not super spicy. Like I said, these ones are fantasy romance books, so they're really heavy on the fantasy, and like the romance is kind of like a subplot or like a plot that follows along, but we're focusing a lot more on the fantasy elements. So that's for both A Fate Inked in Blood and A Curse Carved in Bone. So the next book that I read / finished was Spark of the Everflame by Penn Cole. Now this was, if you guys have watched my TBR picking videos, you'll know that this was the buddy read for July we had picked it for, but obviously me and Book Bestie doesn't read as quick as I do, which is totally fine. I'm happy to slow down for him, that's fine. I've got plenty of other books to keep me company. But yeah, finished this in August. This is another book that let me down so much, and after looking at some reviews, I'm now understanding why. However, I do have Glow of the Everflame here, and I do want to read it. I haven't put it on the TBR this month because I'm really angry at this book, but anywho, I do have Glow of the Everflame, and I was saying to Book Bestie that if I read Glow of the Everflame and it's more set up, I'm gonna be really annoyed. I'm really excited and really keen to read on and see, like, you know, where the story goes, because the cliffhanger in this, chef's kiss. However, like, I'm talking chef's kiss to the point where I was gonna rate this like 1 star and I rated it 3. So I'll read you what I said here because there's only one spoiler, so I can skip past that. But I'll read you what I've written in my reading journal because I feel like I just put it so articulately in here. I've said, I was so excited to read this book and I felt so let down. This book reminds me of ACOTAR in some ways. Nothing happens for 350 pages, then a whole bunch happens. As long as this is because this is the setup for the rest of the series, then fine. Then after all that, something really big happens, and I've said, like, what the fuck. The writing and the flow of this book was great and easy to read, and I'm excited to read the next one in the series. So that's something that I really do want to take my hat off to Penn Cole about, is the readability of this book is so easy. The chapters are huge too, mind you, like 22 pages for the first chapter, ridiculous. However, reading through it, you don't realize that you're reading that many pages. It's super easy to read. So that's something that I really, really did love. In this book, to explain to you what this book is about, which I'm going to struggle with because I've really struggled to read this, you are following Diem Bellator, who is a mortal, and she has been a healer, and her mum has disappeared, and because her mum has disappeared, she is taking on the role of being the medical practitioner for the palace. Now, the palace is run by these people called Descended, who are magical beings, I suppose you would say, from these particular gods. I forget what they're called. But so you have different realms of Emerald. So the one that we're in most of the time for this book is Lumnos, Realm of Light and Shadow. So also I would highly recommend that you do read this first bit of the book, like after the map. A lot of people will skip past this sort of stuff, but it's super important to the story. Like I said, the first one, Lumnos, Realm of Light and Shadow, that's what the magical beings of Lumnos can do. So some of them have shadow magic, some of them have light magic, some of them have both. So really important to read the start of it. You'll get a really good understanding of like all of the regions of Emerald. So like I said, you have the Descended, who are magic beings, and they're descended from the immortal beings, or from their particular gods, I believe. And the way you tell who the Descendants are is they have different hair color, different eye color. So if you are a typical mortal, you'll have brown eyes and like brown hair. But if you are from descended, you will like have different colored eyes, slightly different hair, all that sort of stuff, like very different colored hair. So we're talking like, you know, people with grey blue eyes and red hair, or silver hair and like purple eyes, like, you know, very different, like green eyes and all that sort of stuff. So DM actually does have different colored hair and different colored eyes compared to mortal people, but she got sick when she was younger, and that's why she's lost her pigment in her eyes and her hair. It's the best way that I can explain it. But yeah, so her mother goes missing and DM takes over, and there's a whole bunch of secrets that come out, and yeah, that's all I'm going to say from there. Now, something that I really didn't like about this book, and the reason why it was so hard to get through, is we had a love triangle in this, and I'm not a fan of love triangles either. However, I think I have 3 books. Yeah, I've got 3 books that I've read this month that are love triangle, and I really don't like love triangles. But this one was really bad because I've heard so much about this. I know who she's supposed to end up with, but like you can see that like that's not going to happen and blah, blah, blah. It's really annoying. And then the person that she was with in this, I really disliked, really disliked, and I couldn't, like I was skim reading their scenes. So like even if they were just talking, I'm not talking spicy scenes, I'm talking like they were just having a conversation, I was skim reading because I just didn't care for anything that character had to say. I'm not going to say who it is because I don't want to spoil it for you, but yeah, for that particular character, I just did not care what he had to say. So my ratings for this was 3 stars out of 5, and it got a 0.5 chili spice because it really wasn't that spicy. I have heard that it gets better for the rest of the series, which is why I have Glow of the Everflame and Heat of the Everflame already on my shelf, because I do want to continue reading the series. So, which I got to have started it now. Then next up, we have the 4 books that I read in my 24-hour challenge. So first up, we have One by One by Frida McFadden. I actually quite enjoyed this. I haven't read a lot of mystery, thrillers, crime fiction, all those sorts of things. I think I've read maybe 3 or 4. This is my 4th of like the mystery thrillers that I've read. This is my 2nd Frida McFadden book. I actually liked this better than The Inmate. Was not what I expected, and it was quite slow at the start. This is only like a 258 page book, and it took like 100 and something pages for anything really to happen. I think the only thing that had happened by that point was someone ate some poison berries. So like it just was very odd. So in this book, you are following Claire and her husband, Noah, I think is his name. So you're following Claire and her husband, Claire's best friend and Claire's best friend's boyfriend, Claire's husband's best friend and his wife. They all plan a trip to go away for a week together into like this cabin in the woods. And on the way there, they've picked everyone up in Claire's minivan, and on the way there, Claire's minivan breaks down. They decide to just jump out of the minivan and walk to find the inn because it shouldn't be too far. However, they get lost in the woods, and one by one, they all start disappearing. And that's all I'm going to tell you from there. This was super interesting. You definitely have unreliable narrator vibes in this because you have 2 POVs, and one of them is anonymous and one of them is Claire's. And you don't know who the anonymous is all the way to the very end, obviously. And yeah, it was super interesting. Thought it was really good. I didn't mind this book. It got a 3.75 star rating from me, and it also got a 0.5 chili spice because there is a spicy scene in this, and like it's somewhat graphic. Then the next one that I read and finished was Gravity by Sarah Kate. Now, I love Sarah Kate's writing. I've read Praise by her this year as well as this one, and I definitely liked Praise more than this. However, that was only because this was a love triangle. However, in saying that, I did like the way that she did this love triangle more than other love triangles. It wasn't, I just don't know how to explain how it was. Let's just give you the synopsis first, or like a breakdown on what the book is about. So you are following Zara and Nash and Alistair. Now, Zara had a twin sister that was dating Nash's brother, and Alistair is Nash and his Preston, I think his name was. Yeah, so I think Preston, Nash and Preston's dad is Alistair. 2 years before like this book takes place, so you do get a insight into what happened to Zara's sister Emma and Preston. You do get an insight into what happened and what happened to make them die. However, the book starts like 2 years after that. Like that's where we really get into the story of this book. Zara is a spicy dancer, so she's working in the club as a stripper. All the power to you, love it. And Nash rocks up there one day, and next thing you know, these men are involved in her life for the rest of her life, essentially. So Nash gets pretty rough with her, and they end up back at her place, and just like some stuff goes down. And then like the next night or a couple of nights later, Alistair rocks up, and Zara's like, what is going on? and Alistair essentially says, I think you're the only person that can tame my son, and my son is going off the rails, so I will pay you money to come back to my island, my private island that he owns, and see if you can help him. And they write up a contract that has all of these things in it, and lo and behold, she ends up falling in love with both of them. So it is a really nice story, just seeing the way that she's helped heal both of them. And there was one scene in this and I was like, oh my lord. But anywho, this is a taboo romance, love triangle, billionaire, obviously. And it was really good. I really did enjoy this book. And like I said, I'm not a fan of love triangles. So when I started reading this, like I started reading the first couple of pages and then I read the back and I was like, oh, this is probably going to be a DNF. And I think that's in my reading blog for my 24-hour challenge as well. I will link that down below too if you guys want to go see that. I actually really love this. Like I read this in a few hours. So yeah, Gravity by Sarah Kay. I highly recommend. This got a 4.25 star rating and it got a 3.5 chili spice because this was spicy. Sarah Kay knows how to write spice. Okay, then next up, I listened to and read Caught Up by Liz Tom 40. This was so good. Loved this book. I love this series in general. So in this one, you're following Kai and Miller. Kai is a single dad, but his son was kind of dumped on him. I was gonna say dumped on his doorstep, but the mum did show up and like was like, this is your baby, he's yours, you gotta have him now, when the child Max was 6 months old. And Kai is also starting pitcher for the Chicago Warriors, I think it is. I think it's the Chicago Warriors, the Chicago's NBL team. And he obviously, like, his schedule is really heavy and really fully loaded with being a single dad as well as playing baseball. So the team has done really well in accommodating him for that, and you know, making sure that he can still travel and bring his son with him, and hired nannies and all that. He keeps firing his nannies because to him no one is good enough for his son. And then we're following Miller, who is a pastry chef. She does desserts and all that sort of stuff. And after winning the James something award, I can't remember what it's called, but she wins like the most prestigious award in her industry. And after that, she ends up experiencing a whole lot of burnout. She can't create anything new. She's burning really basic dishes. And she's like, I don't understand why this is happening to me. So she ends up taking the summer off and she decides to go and spend it with her dad. But Miller says to her dad, who is also the coach of Kai's baseball team, who is Monty, and Miller kind of says, oh, well, you know, like, I'll be here for your games, but like, I won't see you when you're not here and you're traveling. And he goes, actually, I think I might have an idea for that. And Monty decides to bring Miller on as Max's nanny and says to Kai, you can't fire her because I'm the only one that can fire her. So the story goes from there. It's a really, really beautiful story. Overall, this story is really beautiful, but the highlight of this book is the relationship that Max and Miller have and the relationship that Monty has with all three of them. So, because Max is Kai's son, and yeah, just the relationship that Monty develops with Kai and with Max, and it's so beautiful, and I really love this book and I highly recommend you guys read this series. Like, the whole series has been really good. Mile High is probably my least favorite so far. I still liked it, but it just wasn't my favorite compared to this and The Right Move. This is my favorite one in the series so far. This has the sport, obviously it's a sports romance, so it's got the sports trope in it. Single dad and the nanny trope, and found family, which all of the books in the Windy City series have the found family trope, because the big group that develops with this friendship is just so beautiful. Like, if you've read the series, you know that you've got Stevie and Xander's, you've got Ryan and Indy, you've got Rio, who is on Xander's team, you've got Kai and like Miller obviously end up in this. You also have Isaiah, who is Kai's brother in this, which the next book is about. It's just really beautiful to see this like family and friendship come together, and you know, they have like family night every week, and it's really, really beautiful. Like, I highly recommend you read this series. It's so beautiful. I've got 2 left in the series and play-alongs on my TBR for this month because there was no way I wasn't going to be reading it this month. So, and then last but not least, we have the last book that I read in my 24-hour challenge, and the last book for the month, which was Shatter Me by Tahera Murphy. This is a young adult dystopian fantasy, or dystopian. The tropes you have in this is enemies to lovers. You also have a love triangle. You have friends to lovers and forced proximity. This one is heavier on the friends to lovers than it is the enemies to lovers. However, you can see the sprinklings of enemies to lovers and a love triangle coming into it. So in this, you are following Juliet, and Juliet has a fatal touch. So anyone she touches, she kills. This book starts with her being locked up in a asylum, and she's had like 264 days in there being completely alone and had to learn the things of the asylum. And then one day someone comes in and ends up rooming with her. She realizes it's a boy that she knew from school, and the story goes from there. I'm not going to tell you anything else other than that. I think that you should definitely go into this book really blind. It is definitely very dystopian in terms of, you know, we have civilizations that are living underground, you have like a really big rebellion, you've got like a new political side to this as well. It's a really good book. I highly recommend. I'm super excited to go on with the series as well. I didn't have super high expectations for this, but it, you know, I rated it pretty highly. And it definitely does feel like that this was the setup book. Like, yes, there was still plot that happened, but I feel like the next books in the series are definitely going to be faster moving than this one. I definitely feel like the pacing will be faster in the other ones than it was in this one. Not that this one was slow by any means, but it wasn't that fast either, if that makes sense. So this got a 3.5 star rating from me, but it didn't get any chili spice because it is very, very YA. It's very much YA. So yeah, I still really enjoyed this book though, so take that as you will. Okay, so that is the end of today's video. I hope you guys did enjoy it. I'm so sorry, I'm so cold. Anyway, digressing. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you have read any of the books that I read this month, let me know what you thought of them. Like I said, I will link down below my September TBR picking video as well as my 24-hour reading challenge video. So keep an eye out next week for swapping my screen time for reading time. I'm starting that today. Also, don't forget to follow me on TikTok and Instagram. I will link them on the screen and in the down box below. If you guys want annotated books, my Etsy shop is always linked in the description below as well. And yeah, that's it. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye. Mwah.